Hello, my name is Michelle, and you're watching From Surviving to Thriving. What happens when you leave a female narcissist or a female narcissist with borderline tendencies, or simply what happens when you leave someone with a cluster B personality disorder? Well, thanks to the male subscriber that sent in these audio clips, we'll get to hear what happens and also kind of pick apart certain tactics, certain symptoms of a female possibly narcissist, possibly cluster B personality disorder, and we'll get to analyze it a little bit. So first of all, thank you to the subscriber who sent in these audios. I appreciate others that share parts of what they're going through, because other people get to see and hear similar things to what they're going through. They can identify with it, and it's very helpful and very validating. So thank you so much. For anyone else that has thought of sending something in, I always tell people when they email me to please make sure that you're in a one-party consent state, which means that you have the legal right to record a conversation as long as you're part of the conversation with or without the other person's knowledge. So please make sure of that before you send me anything. Okay, so before I play this audio, I just want to let you know that a little bit of the background, and that is that this male subscriber was wanting to leave while the other party was gone. And that's pretty common for people that are in a relationship with a cluster B personality, and that's because trying to reason with them, trying to explain to them, look, it's not working out, I need to separate, I need to do this, we need to take a step back, winds up becoming messy. You either wind up in an unresolvable disagreement where nothing, you're going on and on for hours without resolving anything, or you're met with so much emotional rage that it's just distressing, or no matter how hard you try to get your point across or to explain the difficulties that you're facing in the relationship, you're kind of silenced and forced to listen to a monologue that never seems to end. So that's why so many choose to leave while the other party is not around. But in this case, the other party came home while he was making those arrangements. So let's take a look at what happens.
Get out of the hotel and leave. And I will have water stuff at the front door. You gotta get out of the hotel. We gotta leave right now.
I'm not leaving.
Yeah, I'm leaving. Get out.
Call the police.
Okay, you call me.
No, you call the police.
Get out.
I'm not leaving all my possessions unattended.
Well, you know what? That's what you get for not getting with me. That's it, isn't it?
That's what you think. I'm not.
Yep, you are.
No, you call the police.
Yes.
I will leave when the police ask me to leave. So you can call it. Okay. I'm not gonna leave all my expensive stuff here unattended and go stay in a hotel room so that you can mess with it.
I'm not gonna mess with it.
How do I know?
Because
I'm leaving it.
I don't want any piece of you ever again.
It's fine.
Ever.
Fine.
I don't want from you. Mom, you need to call the police because they won't leave.
You tell her why. You're trying to move all my things and you're gonna damage something.
No.
Yeah.
No, Mom. How am I supposed to have peace of mind, Mom? You can't, Mom!
Movers are coming at 10 tomorrow.
I don't even care. You're gonna get out and you're gonna be back at 10 a.m. and make you pick up all day by the door.
I don't want you moving all my stuff.
Then help me.
You just need to wait until 10 a.m. when the movers arrive.
Because, Mom, I have to study. He put this to me. He knew I had an exam. He knew Leo was here. He couldn't be a decent person. Shows how much you really care and love. You didn't even think about how she asked for you every day. And you're literally going to leave when you picked her up from school and she was here and you're just going to be gone. And she's never going to see you again.
Making a lot of assumptions.
Well, what are you going to do her again? No.
You don't know. You just are making a lot of assumptions.
No, we're never going to meet again. And
Okay,
you're
that's
never
your
gonna
choice.
see again, David.
That's your choice.
Because you don't love me. You don't do this to
That's not
somebody.
true.
You do this to somebody. You do this to somebody. Why? Because they couldn't deal with it anymore. I couldn't deal with it. They knew. It's just a way to
Stop damaging my stuff.
You get fucked back at me is what it is because you know.
Stop damaging my stuff.
He didn't even tell me. He said, oh, I couldn't tell you because this is how you would react. You don't just go out. And I asked you why you're so stressed, and I asked you why, and I knew that something was wrong, and you said that you didn't want to talk about it over and over, or that there's nothing to talk about, or that we can't get through. And you know what, maybe that was the case, but you didn't try anything. You couldn't see a counselor.
So let's pause it for a second. Here she recognizes that they were unable to communicate, but she shifts the blame and says, but you didn't try enough, or you need to see a counselor. So that's a classic example of blame shifting and refusing to take responsibility.
You're right, I didn't stay in this relationship for close to 2 years.
Close to 2 years, even though I wanted out long ago.
It's so common for people with cluster B personality disorders, those that have that fear of abandonment, to always want to make it known that they were the ones that wanted out first.
Oh, now you can get that.
But it doesn't work that way because you fall in love with somebody. Because you stay with them.
You don't love me.
I do love you.
No, you call me a piece of shit. You all the time.
Out of anger because
Yeah, well, it's called verbal abuse.
because you don't talk to me. And when you're
Because
silent,
when I talk to you, you are verbally and emotionally abusive and explosive and violent.
okay,
Yeah,
that's good to know. And
you should know that moving forward.
okay.
Maybe you should tell your counselor
You know what?
that.
None of my boyfriends have ever not talked to me, and you're
Okay, so it's interesting here when he points out the verbal abuse and she can't deny it. She says, okay, well, that's good to know, but you're the only one out of all of my boyfriends that has done this, that, and the other thing. A healthy response would have been, you know, you're right. I keep messing up. I have a problem. I don't know why I keep doing this. I want help. That would have been a healthy response. But unfortunately, she minimizes her actions and then once again passes the blame on to the other party.
the only one that doesn't know how to communicate your feelings. So
Because the way that you communicate your feelings is yelling and screaming.
you've never sat down with me and said, this is how I feel, this is what I want from the relationship, this is what's wrong with the relationship, this is what I can do, this is what you need to do. You never gave me any of that.
Yeah, we've talked about all those things.
Here, I just want to point out how well the subscriber answers with just one sentence. And I think that's where sometimes us women tend to need a little bit of work with that, because when the narcissist accuses us of something that's false, we think we need to prove it to them. We need to prove to them our reality. But the truth is, when you know the truth, you don't have to waste your breath in proving it. And I noticed that with the subscriber.
You never gave me any of that. You never said what was bothering you the most. You never said what you could do. You never
I've
said
told
what I
you,
could do.
I've told you those things many times.
You said it's too messy for you.
It is that too.
Exactly. So I don't know why you didn't leave me earlier instead of making us both miserable and not only hurting me, but now you're too. And don't shake your head like you don't care. I mean, you probably don't care.
It's not what I'm doing.
Then why are you shaking your head?
Because you say things that are not true.
Then why did you stay in this relationship?
Because I love you.
And why did I stay in this relationship? Because I love you, did. Yes, I do.
You certainly don't show it.
Really? Okay.
And again, she misses another opportunity to just own her mistakes and work at trying to better herself or change whatever's causing her to act this way.
Because when I get completely ignored by somebody that I'm with and don't get to talk to them and they don't talk to me, and I try and try.
You choose when you're perceptive to the fact that I ignore you. You'll choose times like when you're studying a lot, or when you're going to a bar until 2 in the morning, or when you're working overtime. Then you'll say, you know what, David ignores me and never makes time for me. Well, guess what?
No, I don't say whenever
It's a
makes
two-way
sense to me.
street.
I'm saying you never text me during the day. You're always texting Zoe, and you know what I
I'm
mean?
not always
Here's
texting
where I work
Zoe.
out.
I'm not always texting
You're probably
Zell.
having an affair with him.
You're right.
Because why would you say, oh, well, Zora told me I needed to get a storage unit?
Because she did.
So Zora told you to get an apartment?
No?
Zora actually told you to get a storage unit?
Yes. They are mutually exclusive things. There's nothing to do with the apartment. Why would I need a storage unit if I had a freaking apartment?
Yelling or raising your voice.
Oh, wow.
Now, I thought that was very interesting that she's claiming he's raising his voice, although he's not yelling, and yet she has yet to acknowledge her own yelling and cursing and lack of control during any previous conversations. Now, with cluster Bs, that accusation is often done or said to unbalance the other party, because the cluster B person knows that they're the ones that have the lack of control. But by accusing you falsely, it's extremely frustrating to be falsely accused and treated as if you're doing something that you're not. And oftentimes when the other party insists that you're doing something that you're not, it's common to lose control and get frustrated and actually start raising your voice just out of frustration. And that's exactly what a cluster B would want you to do. In this case, once again, the subscriber handled it wonderfully.
Just from you.
Hey, I'm not yelling or raising my voice at you right now.
For the first time in a year and a half.
It's interesting how she wants to point out that at this moment, she's not yelling, she's in complete control, as if that's enough to discredit a long history of that kind of behavior. But once again, I have to point out that the subscriber handled it very well and focused on the fact that long-term actions always speak louder than what a person says when they're about to be discarded.
You to please not say anything to me that's mean. But you know what, right now I'm accepting if that's how you think I am, then maybe that's the way I am. There's nothing I can do about it. You're leaving, there's nothing I can do about it. We clearly don't want to be together. We're clearly not happy together. It's just not going to work out. So, that's that.
Great.
It's a usual breakup.
Great.
But, why do you say great?
I just got it all figured out.
Well, I mean, are you agreeing with me?
Sure.
Why are you saying no and then saying sure?
I didn't say no.
You said sure.
Conversations with cluster Bs often don't make sense. They involve so much confusion that it's easy to lose sight of the conversation where it's supposed to be going. But in this case, he didn't, but she definitely tried to make him do that.
Sure.
Well, could you please give me peace of mind and tell me
Peace of mind what?
what do you think to that situation? This is an usual breakup. We're not happy together.
Because of fear of abandonment, a cluster B cannot accept being rejected. So they have to be involved somehow and also be rejecting to ease what they're going through.
This is what you wanted.
No, I didn't say that I wanted to break up with you. But I do feel like I need to move out of this house.
You don't think that you living on your own is not eventually going to break this up?
No.
Because that's how you and Keisha were and all your other girlfriends. You didn't live together. And now you live together. Clearly you can't coexist. You have it whenever.
Well,
I mean, I'm not in a relationship to have somebody I love live in another place.
Many cluster Bs have a very difficult time with object permanence. If they don't see the person, it's as if they don't exist. It's very hard for them. And for that reason, this person can't comprehend how somebody can stay in the relationship without living together.
And if you can't do it now, you can never do it.
Many people with cluster B personalities have all or nothing thinking. Everything is black or white. There's nothing in the middle. So in her mind, it's basically now or never. If he's unable to stay in the relationship without living with her now, in her mind, he never will be able to. Now, obviously, this isn't true, but somebody that has black and white thinking or goes from one extreme to the other has a difficult time understanding this.
Think about it.
That's your personal opinion.
You really think that now how this is and how you don't like it, that in 10 years you're just going to be okay with that? when would you plan on moving back in? I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Now, somebody that's a cluster B personality has a really difficult time being able to self-reflect. Right now, she's very focused on what's going to happen, his actions, when he's leaving, why he's leaving, and when he's coming back. With all that's transpired in the relationship, she should be thinking, wow, he is taking a step back by moving out, but he's telling me he doesn't want to leave me. My behavior has pushed him to this point. What can I do to help the relationship? Once again, instead of self-reflecting, she's putting the responsibility on him and the fact that he's not going to be living there as the problem, as opposed to her behavior.
You don't move in with somebody and move out and expect them to be with you. You're just, I can't speak for you in this thing. I mean, I know that you've been really unhappy with me, and I just think that this is better for you. I can't make you happy, and I don't know what to do, and clearly I'm angry and psychotic, and you can't get through to me, and that's it.
Again, she realizes that she can't deny her behaviors, but she's not willing to do any of the internal work. She's not willing to say, I want to get help. I want to do something. It's all the focus on is the fact that he wants to leave where they're living.
And I hope that you can find somebody that can give that to you. Whatever it is you need or want. And that's all I can do. I can't do anything else except just accept it. So and if you want to tell me your last words about, what it is you think our relationship was or whatever, I would like to know.
First of all, when I scheduled this move 2 days ago, I did not know that you had multiple tests and all this stuff going on. Second of all, I didn't know that it was your week to have them. Third of all, I wasn't planning to just leave you and not give any explanation and just be gone. Fourth of all, I do love you and me both very, very much, and making this decision was literally the hardest thing I've ever done. And when I made the decision to do it, I felt physically sick since then. And the reason that I made the decision, there were a lot of factors involved in it. One of them being, as I said, you've already asked me 4 or 5 times to leave, and when you do, you usually say, oh yeah, sure, I'll give you some time, but about 20 minutes after you do it, you say, you know what, I don't care if it's 4 o'clock in the morning and raining or whatever the case may be. If it's not possible to even get a vehicle to transport your stuff, I just want you to get out. That's the kind of stuff that makes it impossible for me to stay in this situation. When I'm really not doing anything wrong, just because I didn't text you about it, you assume I'm cheating, you call me a liar, you say I'm a piece of shit. Your daughter has picked up the choice phrase, "Fuck you, David." All 3 words is one. No, that's not true.
She said it for a couple weeks.
She is.
Here we see there's no apology given and there's a minimization of the wrongdoing.
Said it again. She says those 3 words together because she hears them in sequence so frequently together. That's called verbal abuse.
Okay, please tell me the times that she said it. She said it once in the ice cream truck, and then she said it
She
once.
said it within the last week and a half, 2 weeks.
Oftentimes a cluster B will focus on something that's irrelevant. She wants to know the exact moments when the mistakes have been made instead of focusing on the fact that they're being made in the first place and it needs to be corrected.
I never heard it.
She said it again.
I never heard it.
Well, you know what? If a tree falls in the forest and you don't hear it, I guess it doesn't make any sound.
Here's another example of that black and white thinking. If the cluster B doesn't see or hear it, then it doesn't exist in their mind. At this point, a healthy person would say, is she really saying it that much? I didn't realize that. It's obvious that I need to stop. And then apologize. Apologize for giving the bad example. Apologize for not correcting it sooner, but take responsibility for the wrongdoing.
I'm not making it up.
So I don't.
This choice is going to cost me over $15,000.
Well, that's good for you.
Yeah, that's great for me. So I wouldn't just make something up.
A narcissist or a narcissist/borderline is very demanding for your empathy. They want your total empathy, but they give zero empathy back. And here's a classic example of that. When he mentions his hardship in this split, she answers with a good for you.
To have to go to that link.
Number 5, what?
I'm not making a number 5.
You just said factor 4, and then what else?
Again, instead of discussing rationally what she can do to help the situation, she tells him, okay, well, what's the 5th thing? She hasn't offered not one solution, not one thing that she feels she can do to help with his concerns. And yet she wants him to keep naming off more concerns.
I've tried to talk to you.
All that's going on. Tell me everything.
I have tried to talk to you about the fact that you get combative and explosive and yell and scream and all this kind of stuff. Anytime we talk about anything, you always turn it around and just say, well, that's something you should have done. It always turns into something that I should have done. I'm always at fault. Everything is always my fault. And so there's no point even talking to you about anything because you'll just tell me how it's my fault. Or that I'm wrong. No, this is what's happened. This is based on our conversations over the course of the last year and a half.
And then let me give you this thing here. So yes, that's happened, and then I told you I would work on it, and people don't change. It takes time for change. And you haven't given me the opportunity to have a conversation with you like that. You haven't given me the chance to better myself. You haven't.
I'm just going to pause it for a second. Just when I think she's saying, yes, I realize I need to change, right away she turns it around and says, but I haven't because you haven't given me the chance to. It's like a halfway admittance. She's admitting it, but it's really not completely her fault. It's really your fault for not helping and doing your part.
Given that to me, you haven't.
A year and a half is not.
Here are some things to look for if you are in a relationship like this and you're contemplating if it could possibly work out. First of all, there should be a real apology. A real apology doesn't have blame in the same sentence. It owns the responsibility of your own actions, of your mistakes. A real apology should include expressions of remorse at what your behavior or what the person's behavior has caused the other person to feel. 2, when you're discussing your problems, the other party shouldn't just pause as you're explaining your concerns, but there should be actual dialogue. They should be giving their opinion on it. Maybe even offering up solutions or talking about what they can do differently to help with that concern. It's not just a matter of pause, okay, tell me how you feel, and then move forward with your own agenda. There should be real listening, which requires that you also share what your thoughts are regarding that person's concerns. You should listen for self-reflection. Is this person able to look at himself or herself and realize the mistakes they've made? Are they able to see themselves, see their mistakes, and are they willing to change them? If the other party has made a decision that they feel is the best decision for the relationship, do they have the ability to respect that decision? And one final thing that should always be present in a relationship is empathy. Is the party only concerned with what happens with them, or do they show genuine feeling with what happens to you as well?